Welcome to Bald Guy DIY. In this video, I'm going to give you 3 reasons why we need the electrical code and why we shouldn't just look at it as a bunch of rules that make life difficult. If you've ever taken it upon yourself to do your own electrical work, you've probably heard of the electrical code and the requirements that are needed in order to properly install electrical equipment. Whether that's wire, new receptacles, lighting, or something fancier, there are rules that the electrical code lays out, and it's important that we follow those rules. If you're not familiar and you start reading the electrical code book, you're going to get confused pretty quickly. That's because it's mostly written in a legal format, or legalese as we call it, and that's the way that a lawyer would speak, not the way that's simple and easy to understand for the average person. I think partly because of that, and also because the terminology seems foreign, we start to feel that the rules are just made up by somebody and they don't really matter. However, that's not really the case, and the electrical code itself was designed primarily for 3 reasons. Those 3 reasons are safety, standardization, and convenience. The rules are not arbitrary or made up, but they're actually purposely chosen and designed in a way to make sure that all 3 of those objectives are met. It might seem like a lot of the rules don't have a specific purpose, but they were all created to meet the need of a particular situation. Things like how much spacing there needs to be between receptacles, or how close something can be to a source of water, or even what size a conductor, they might not seem super important when you first start thinking about it, but the more you delve into it and the more you think about the rationale, there is a real purpose and method behind them, and there's a lot of consideration and time that's gone into making those things just right. So let's talk about those 3 objectives. The first one is safety, and this one is one that we all should understand. The electricity that we use, even in our homes or businesses, is dangerous, and it has the potential to cause serious injury or even death if it's not handled properly. Electricity is a silent killer because everything looks fine until a circuit is completed, and then suddenly current is flowing and the damage is already done in an instant. A lot of times there's not even any indication by our 5 senses that anything's wrong. It might look okay, not have any strange sound or smell. It might not feel hot to the touch or any of those things, but when you make contact with something that's not safe, it may cause electrocution or serious electrical damage to yourself or to other equipment. The main 2 hazards that electricity poses is damage to our bodies, and the second main concern is for fires. Electrical equipment that's not properly rated, or it's being overloaded beyond the manufacturer's specifications, or even something that's been damaged, can create heat, and that heat, if left unchecked, can lead to fires in our homes, businesses, anything that's flammable. Of course, also some of the devices that we use that are powered by electricity also create a lot of heat. Things like our oven or stovetop or an electric heater, all sorts of different things create heat. Even something like a hairdryer, they create heat, and if left unchecked, it can do damage. So the safety that we're trying to ultimately achieve is electrical safety, so that we're not electrocuted or suffering tissue damage, and also that we're not doing anything that could lead to a fire. The electrical code puts in guidelines that protect us by giving safe parameters for how much load can be on a circuit, how much current can be flowing through a wire, and even which wires are energized so we know whether or not to touch them. If you haven't yet seen my video on ampacity, I go into explain some of the reasons why we use the conductor sizes that we do, and so that we don't create too much heat and cause damage to the insulation of the wires or to other things that are surrounding them. Also, if you haven't seen the video that I did on asking if wire colors matter, check it out, because it explains why we use certain colors with electrical conductors, and they help us to identify which conductors are carrying electricity, which ones can be safely disconnected from the supply, and ones that you wouldn't expect to find any current flowing on at all. These are all important considerations, especially for the people that open and close those circuits or replace electrical equipment, knowing that it can be safe and not having to wonder how it was hooked up. If we don't have a code to tell us how things are supposed to be done properly, we won't really know when we start working on something if it's safe or not. If you've seen the Canadian electrical code, the one that we use as electricians, it says part 1 on it. And you might wonder why it says part 1 and if there's a part 2 or 3 or 4. And the answer is that there definitely are other parts of the electrical code. We see the part that affects the installation of wiring and outlets, things like that. But parts 2, 3, 4, they affect the manufacturing process or other industrial requirements to make sure that it's going to be safe on another level. A lot of the electrical code coincides with that manufacturing code, so that some of the rules that are put in place might not seem immediately evident when you think about them just in your own home. But if you were to compare it to the requirements for the manufacturing of those electrical devices, you would see that that's why some of these things are in place. The electrical code sets a minimum standard for safety, not an absolute standard. So that means that you could choose to use a larger wire size if that was more convenient, or if you thought it would be better for your application. You could use a smaller breaker, one that's more likely to trip with a lesser load, not one that's likely to trip with a greater load, because that puts it at a higher risk. There's also other things that you can do to go above and beyond the requirements of the code and make your electrical circuits even more safe. But the code does a great job of setting basic minimums, and that's what we depend upon to keep us safe. The second big reason for the electrical code is for standardization. Now, you might not think that's a big deal, but could you imagine if every province or every city or every country used a different style of outlet, and so that none of your devices fit into the standard receptacle? That would be extremely frustrating. And so the electrical code creates standards that all of the jurisdictions adopting that code are required to put in place. So for example, the standard 120 volt 3-prong socket that you see in all of our homes and businesses in Canada, that's a standardized requirement of the code, so you can't just add something different because you feel like it. If you dig deeper into the layout of these receptacles, you can tell just by looking at it with an experienced eye what voltage and amperage the receptacle is rated for. Here's a look at some of the standard ones that you can see, from the 15 amp 120 volt to the 20 amp 120 volt, which has one of the prongs turned sideways, to what a 15 amp 240 volt looks like, and so on. The size and shape of the receptacles is there for a safety reason, so that we plug the right device into the right voltage, but also there so that it's standardized, and manufacturers know what plug to put on an appliance that's being used in Canada. The Canadian Electrical Code has been harmonized in recent years more closely to fit the guidelines of the National Electrical Code that's used in the United States, and that's an acknowledgement again that manufacturers can create more standardized equipment between the two countries that will work in both markets. That makes it a lot easier to regulate, and also makes it a lot simpler for the manufacturer if they can create a lot less options. For the customer, it makes it cheaper, more efficient, and easier to find replacement parts. One of the most commonly asked questions about the electrical code is about the spacing of receptacles, and that ties into the idea of standardization as well. The Canadian Electrical Code specifies that receptacles in a standard room in your house can be spaced no more than 12 feet or about 360 centimeters apart. The reason for that is that in the manufacturing side of the code, a standard appliance or piece of electrical equipment like a lamp must come with a 6-foot cord. That means that if you were to look at any stretch of wall, by having a 6-foot cord and by having the receptacle spaced no more than 12 feet apart, you're always in reach of the nearest outlet. Without standardization, you might have some manufacturers put a 3-foot cord, some 4, 5, 6, or any arbitrary value in between. That would make it much more difficult to find a receptacle when you need one. And so these kinds of rules are the reasons why the electrical code is necessary to keep a nice standardized experience that's consistent from brand to brand, device to device, and so on. When you look at your kitchen counter plugs, they're only spaced 6 feet apart because all of the cords that come for kitchen appliances, things like a blender or a toaster, those have only 3-foot cords for the same reason. By spacing the receptacles no more than 6 feet apart, any device with a 3-foot cord should be able to reach an outlet anywhere on the counter. The third reason for the electrical code is convenience. Now, there are a lot of things that you think about the code being inconvenient, but as I said before, it establishes minimum values to make things more convenient. For example, the electrical code requires that there's only a certain number of wires allowed in a certain size electrical outlet box. The reason for that might be confusing, and you might think, oh, why can't I just put one more set of wires in there? But the reason is because they've calculated how much space those wires take up, and by putting too many wires in, there isn't enough room inside the box, and all of those wires are going to be squished too much, and the potential exists for wire connectors to come undone, or for the device itself to fail because everything is crammed in too tightly. If we follow the rules of the code, it might seem inconvenient to have to put a larger box than we wanted to, but it's more convenient when everything fits properly and there's no extra stress or damage to the conductors because of it. It's also very convenient that if we all follow the same rules and code, we'll know exactly when something looks wrong just by opening a device box and having a look at the switch or receptacle inside. As soon as we see the colors don't match the normal configuration, we immediately have an idea that something's not right, and that convenience factor goes a long way to not having to troubleshoot with a meter or with extensive troubleshooting techniques, and instead you can see at a glance that something's not done properly. The electrical code also specifies things like where a light switch needs to be so that it can be conveniently reached when you enter a room, or how high the electrical panel can be mounted so that an average sized person can reach the top breaker and shut it all off safely without having to get a ladder or something else to stand on. It might seem like these rules make life more difficult, but when they're followed properly, it puts the devices in the right place, ready to use. At the end of the day, the electrical code feels like a very long and boring manual with more rules than we understand. But the more you dig into it, the more you realize that those rules have a purpose, and when that purpose is followed, you get a better result that is safer, standardized with other installations, and more convenient for you to use. Now, if all that seems overwhelming and you don't know how to dig through that huge manual in order to find the answer you're looking for, there are alternatives available online. Of course, you can always Google and see what you turn out with. There are a pocket guide or companion guide to the Canadian Electrical Code that has some of the more commonly used things in it that are easy to refer to, and it's a lot smaller. As the name suggests, it does fit in your pocket. Sometimes home improvement stores like Home Depot, they'll also carry what's called the Electrical Code Simplified, and those can break down some of the most common uses in your home so that it gives a basic explanation that doesn't require as much legal understanding and can make it simpler for you as you do small repairs or additions inside your home. You do need to be careful that those guides are staying current with new versions of the electrical code, as a new version is released every 3 years, and then there's a bit of a delay while those other manuals get updated and also before they get adopted into each province's legislation. For example, the 2018 electrical code didn't get instituted in Alberta until fall of 2019, and so there's always a bit of a delay while a new code comes out and then the manuals are updated. So you just want to make sure that you're not installing things according to the old rules and missing out on some of the changes. In a future video down the road, I'm going to explain the certain cases of when you need an electrical permit in the average jurisdiction, and that of course will bring into play someone else inspecting that installation and making sure that it follows all of those code rules. That's for another video, so stay tuned and look for it coming in the next few weeks. If you like this kind of content, please consider subscribing to the channel, or if you have questions, leave a comment or send me an email. My information's in the description below. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up and keep coming back every week as I post a new video every Saturday morning. Thank you for your support, and on your quest for greater knowledge and understanding when it comes to electricity, don't be afraid to be bolder.